Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who work so hard to make a difference in the lives of others near and far, locally, globally, and digitally. We're part of Rotary International, Service Above Self, an organization of over 1 million people and 36,000 clubs strewn across the planet. Our particular club is both online, the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and asynchronous, which is another level of flexibility for people who have a heart for service, but are wondering how they can get involved with groups who are looking to pool their talents and energies in really interesting and innovative ways to make a difference in the lives of others. Our recording today is one that I am especially excited about because I have known about this guy for a long time. The trailer for his Living on $1 documentary I saw years and years ago. It totally touched my heart. He and three friends, he's going to tell you about this opportunity they had to go to Latin America and learn something profound about what it means to live on $1 a day. If you want to read the full bio, feel free. You can pause this video if you're on our YouTube page or on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page and scroll over to that full bio. If you're on one of our podcast pages, you can pause the audio and then take a look there as well. We hope that this is going to be one of many recordings that you see with us that inspire you to see what's possible in terms of service. With that, Zach. With that, Chris, who knows Zach very well, it is great to have you and welcome. It is a pleasure for you to be speaking to us at the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. I hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of Rotary. We've seen your work in action around the world, and we've seen the impact that each of your individual efforts are making on the ground. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. So let's dive right in. I'm an optimist. I believe that progress is possible, and I believe that it's not naive to be an optimist, but it's actually very necessary given the different crises that we're facing around the world. And I think it can often be very easy to look at the news today and be overwhelmed by some of the statistics or some of the issues that you're facing. But I don't find pessimism to be a particularly productive emotion. I like to move towards action. So I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of the journey of how I became an optimist and hopefully leave you with a couple tools yourselves to hopefully take this philosophy of optimism and apply it into your own work. So when I was kind of getting started into activism and to filmmaking, I came across, let's see here, this statistic that 1.1 billion people around the world live under $1 a day. This statistic just floored me. It gave me a very emotional reaction, which I call a wait what moment, where you come across something that kind of punches you in the gut. It makes you go, wait, what? Like, how is it possible that there are 1 billion people around the world who have $1 a day, not only for food, but electricity, schooling, businesses, clean water, all of these elements that we're imagining, right? So at the time, my college roommate and I, Zach Ingrassi, came up with an idea to go and live on $1 a day ourselves in a rural village in Guatemala and do research on how families survive at that level. It was all based on the research that we'd seen in this book called Portfolios of the Poor, where these amazing researchers charted over a 4-year period actually how innovative the extreme poor are to survive when you only have $1 a day to budget, right? And there's an incredible amount of actually quite complex financial services that people are using when they're not a part of the formal banking system and excluded from that. So this was our house that we lived in. It was a typical kind of adobe mud hut in Guatemala in this small community of Peña Blanca in the rural highlands. It's very similar to what most of the community were living with. You know, this was our bedroom, again, similar to what most of the community, a lot of just small mats on the ground. They come with a lot of issues, whether it's, rodents, fleas, other health concerns that happen just from not having an elevated bed. I mean, it might seem simple, but but really can have some quite consequential elements to it. Our water was just coming out of a pipe out of the side of the mountain. So you can see kind of in the bottom of my Nalgene water bottle here, the amount of sediment and dirt that was in there, but worse, obviously when it's unfiltered, we all suffered from E. coli, Giardia, amoebas, a lot of other things that affect, over 600 million people on a daily basis around the world. Um, and obviously we could only get a glimpse of what life was like in extreme poverty, right? We went for a couple months to live in this experience coming from a place of privilege in the US, and we kind of parachuted in and out. So we knew we could never replicate life in extreme poverty, but we wanted to simulate a couple key aspects and then capture that to be able to share in YouTube videos and other research for people to learn along with. So we gave ourselves $1 a day each for our time there, fairly simple. There were four of us, four friends who went down. But instead of giving ourselves $1 each day, we took our income and we split it into random increments between 1 and 9. And that's because, for the reality for families who are living in extreme poverty, you're not, the $1 a day is actually just an average over time. It's not like someone's actually getting $1 a day each day. Most families at that level are employed informally in the economy or are day laborers, working as farmers. So you may have 3 days of work, 5 days without work. It actually adds a whole layer of complexity to budgeting not only a small amount of income, but now you have an irregular income on top of it. And third, kind of the triple whammy that it's called is then you've got an unpredictable life where things and emergencies and elements happen when you're living right on that line and that edge of extreme poverty, whether that's a disaster, whether that's a mudslide comes through, a sickness like Giardia or E. coli that I was talking about before. So we were eating about 600 calories a day, just rice, beans, sometimes homemade corn tortillas. Sometimes we got up to more like 900 calories a day, so less than half of what you're supposed to have. I remember in those first few weeks, I've been bitten by fleas all night. We'd waking up on the dirt floor, we hadn't eaten, you're dizzy. You're trying to imagine just standing up, let alone thinking cognitively. It really, really surprised us. It feels like you're moving underwater when you have that level of hunger, right? It's the cognitive drain was absolutely shocking. And I remember, those first couple weeks being like, why are we doing this? What is the point of us being here? And then we met this kid, Chino, and his cousin, Luis. Chino's the one on the left and Luis is on the right here. They came up and introduced themselves and started chatting with us, talking about their lives. They were working, 10, 12 hours in the fields during the day and then also going to school, eating the same food that we were, sleeping on the same floors that we were. And we just really started spending time together. We shared meals, we cooked over the open fire together, we played soccer together, we swapped language training. So they taught us Cachiquel, the local Mayan dialect, and we shared some of our expertise in English. I think like the first sort of lesson that it taught me was it took this number of 1.1 billion that was felt so abstract and just this giant statistic. And it really kind of brought it down to, 1.1 billion individual people, just like Chino, who were facing incredible amount of hardship, but just happened to be born into a life of poverty, not privilege, right? Through no choice of their own. And then I think when we were looking at coming up with solutions or making progress around an issue like 1.1 billion people living in extreme poverty, it was like, hey, well, if you can affect one individual like Chino, that is an incredibly powerful thing that just changed that one person's life. And it really just humanized and connected us to what can often seem like these very overwhelming statistics that generate apathy, in my opinion. So, having these faces to the experience of what it's like to live at that level really inspired us to start to share these stories when we were leaving Guatemala. So, I remember on our last day, we leave and we go back to our home in the United States. I'd lost about 25 pounds. I had Giardia and E. coli. It was in all of my fingernails had turned orange and yellow from the lack of iron. And this was just in a couple months. And so, we've really asked ourselves at this point, what I think is kind of one of the most important questions in your journey to being an activist is, couldn't we at least? And so we came back home. We were young students who had no money. Um, we had to go back to college, so we didn't have, that much time. We were supposed to be focusing on other things. But what we did have were these amazing stories and photos and videos that we'd filmed in Guatemala. So we started asking ourselves, well, couldn't we at least, make a YouTube video and to help share this? Or couldn't we at least to start to talk to friends and family about what life in extreme poverty was really like? So we started putting together some videos and naively thought, well, how hard would it be to make a documentary? That can't be that hard, right? So 2 years and 65 versions later, we finished the documentary "Living on $1" that you all saw the trailer to. And this little film talked about our own experience living on $1 a day, but then introduced you to our neighbors and their lives and their hopes and dreams from this community of Peña Blanco, Guatemala. So we'd finished this little film the week of graduation of college and decided, okay, well, do we take traditional jobs? Our parents were pressuring us to go work into consulting or go to law school or something more traditional. And we said, hey, what if we take 6 months and we try to share this film with the world and see if we can raise money for the community? What if we can help just 3 people in Peña Blanco, Guatemala through our efforts? So we started sharing the film in different communities around the US. We took a 1978 school bus, we renovated it, we painted the outsides, we put beds and desks inside of it, and we drove around the country living in it for 4 months, just sharing this film with anyone who would watch it. So we put it on the sides of bus stops and truckers would come and sit and watch the film with us. We did school screenings. We projected it on the side of a building in Times Square, anyone who would come on this journey with us. And we started to build some real interest in the film and the story, and donations started coming in for a nonprofit in Guatemala that we were a big fan of. And the next thing we knew, the film ended up being featured on the homepage banner of Netflix and started being seen by tens of millions of people around the world. This little film that started with a small wait what moment of why are a billion people living under $1 a day started transforming into a movement, right? And before we knew it, our website had crashed. We'd raised over $1.5 million in under 2 weeks for this nonprofit in Guatemala, providing microfinance loans, education loans, or education scholarships, helping to give back to this community that we had just fallen in love with. And it really, it was a crazy whirlwind of an experience, right? And it led us to this moment where we really had to think about, the difference between our intentions and the impact that we wanted to make. We wanted to make sure we were creating what we call outcomes in someone's life. Someone's life was truly getting better as a result of what we were doing. I wasn't interested in just how many views the film had. To me, that was an output. I wanted someone's life to truly change. So we went down to Guatemala again. We visited Rosa and the community in Chino, the young boy that I was telling you about. And we asked what I think is the most important question if you're an activist or a change maker, is just asking the community itself, how can I help? What is the best way for me to help? And I think this question, by asking it demonstrates that you have enough humility to know that you don't have all the answers and that people are experts in their own lives. And, when we asked Chino or others in the community, the answers that they provided us were really surprising. Where at the end of the day, the most common answer we got was that people were looking for an opportunity, right? A hand up, not a hand out, a chance to demonstrate what they could accomplish by starting a business, by moving forward a dream of theirs. And, we don't have time to go into all of the stories, but, one of our friends now, Rosa, who is in the community, she started a weaving business, creating these traditional weavings that you see on her mom's dress there on the left, and was selling those weavings to us. We put them on t-shirt pockets and we're selling them on our website. The business exploded. She hired over 20 people in the community of Peña Blanca, and through the earnings from it, put herself back through school to be the first person, male or female, in her community to graduate from high school. So put herself all the way through that. She didn't stop there. She graduates high school, then she goes and puts herself all the way through med school, and now she's a practicing nurse. And the ripple effects of the change that that kind of a thing can have in that community, not only on Rosa's life, but also then trickling down to other community members, other young girls who can see themselves in Rosa and the dream of what she's accomplished in the health outcomes in the community now that they have a practicing nurse who can be there to help support people, is truly, truly phenomenal, and just inspires us on a daily basis to, again, be an optimist around the change that's being made in the world. Now, today, when you look at the number of people who are living in extreme poverty around the world, that number is down to 690 million. Sure, that is a massive number that needs a lot of help and support from each and every one of us to address that. But that is in a 10-year period, we've been able to get that number. There are hundreds of millions of people just like Chino or Rosa who now are no longer living in extreme poverty thanks to the efforts of people all over the world, including Rosa and Chino, who haven't given up hope. And if they haven't given up hope, then neither should we. And that's why I'm an optimist.
Chris, I
I
love
jammed a lot in there in 10 minutes. Sorry, I went a little over.
You're good. You're totally good. So let's do this. Let's stop sharing, introduce the group that we have got, and then we'll start into our Q&A. So when I call your name, please wave at the camera. So we've got a bunch of members and a real good friend. So let's go through the group. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have Sandy Stabile. We have in Houston, Texas, Rory Olson. We have on Catalina Island in Southern California, Ernie Rodriguez. In Eastern Italy, we have Cecilia Babkirk. And joining, a longtime friend of the club and member of the Rotary Club of Eugene Metropolitan, Heather Edwards. Heather, good to have you as well. My name is Rushton Hurley. I live in San Jose. Chris, let's get things started this way. The path to becoming an optimist for you has very much included how you think about what is possible. So tell us a little bit more about the organization that is Optimist, right? And the kinds of things that you and the team there are doing.
So, our journey began with that wait what moment of seeing there are a billion people around the world, starting this journey of asking that question, well, couldn't we at least do something? And then continually asking the question, how can I help? Whenever we want to support and give back to communities around the world. I think those three questions provide a backbone to all of this work that we've been doing. So it's a rinse and repeat model where we've made now 15 films around the world in different communities, and covering different issue areas, whether that's criminal justice reform here in the US, issues of immigration, poverty alleviation, refugee issues, climate change, food and hunger. And these films, we then build campaigns around them when we release them, and we do speaking tours and we do curriculum content into schools, advocacy campaigns. And the films have raised now a little over $92 million for the causes of nonprofits that are working on these issues. So, if anything, we sometimes describe ourselves as a money multiplier, right? You're like, hey, let's make a film that can tell these stories, that can uplift communities around the world, and through that, those can be really catalysts for inspiring action, whether that's people volunteering, people donating to nonprofits, or to getting involved in really unexpected ways that we've been so proud of the communities we've been, our group of optimists, we call them. Yeah.
So you're in so many ways talking about the multiplying power of stories. So that thing that happens where you experience something that is a story, and telling that story, people become interested in what you're doing, support an effort that generates a news story. That news story puts you in touch with people. Getting in touch with them means that you're learning stories from them. When you did Living on $1, you had no idea, of course, that Rosa, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rosa was going to do what she did to empower her community, to become a nurse. I believe that you also made a video story about that that is available on your YouTube
Yeah,
channel, on your site.
that's
Is that
just
correct?
yeah, it's just free on our YouTube channel. It's a short film about her journey called Rosa These Storms that, really goes into her backstory and then follows her journey through into medical school. And it's a really beautiful, poetic piece that she, after years of knowing one another, for like 4 or 5 years, she wrote us a handwritten note and she said, "I'm finally ready to tell my story." And we sat down in a very intimate interview and she told her story. And her motivation for wanting to become a nurse, which we'd never known for years, was that she'd actually she had had a child who had died of hydrocephalus, and she hadn't been able to save her child's life. And this had been this huge motivation of, I don't want any mother to ever have to experience that again. And and so she really specifically focuses as a nurse in maternal health and maternal care.
So powerful. I mean, with her story in particular, I believe in the trailer, which I mean, there's a 2-minute trailer for Living on One that is itself an inspiring thing that everyone should watch. We'll have the link on our resources for it. That in that video, you talk about how the poor are not poor because they're lazy. The poor they lack capital. They're born into difficult circumstances. Tell us a little bit about that related to the story of Chino, because I believe Chino is also the subject of one of the stories of Be an Optimist.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just so clear there that, for us, again, we could never replicate life in extreme poverty. We came in for a couple months, and the consequences on our health, our cognitive function, our ability to be successful was so profound in just a few months. You realize that you know, the challenges that families are facing and pulling themselves out and up that ladder of out of extreme poverty, facing those circumstances is a Herculean effort. It's incredible what someone like Chino or Rosa is accomplishing. And it takes an incredible amount of grit, innovation. I mean, just taking again I was an economics major, so my focus was so much on the financial lives of the extreme poor. And I've never taken a film class in my life. This was just kind of became an outlet to try to share the things I was nerdy about. And but the billion people that live under $1 a day don't have access to any traditional banking services that we take advantage of in our day-to-day lives, whether that's just savings accounts, access to loans. When you don't have that, it can be incredibly difficult to invest in a big ticket item like starting a business or a new stove that could improve the health indication of your life, because you're living on $1 a day. So it's such a place of survival on a day-to-day basis that people just came up with incredibly innovative ways to kind of create their own informal banking services. There's one, all of microfinance, which is a tool of bringing, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, of bringing loans to the extreme poor and banking services. It was born out of a system that the extreme poor were already doing for themselves called ROSCAs, Rotating Savings and Credits Club, where you'd get 12 friends together. Each person would give, $12, and then you'd take that one person each month would take that lump sum of $144, and they could use it to invest in a bigger ticket item like a business or whatever it would be. And that was so incredibly valuable to families there, and would allow some of that kind of opportunity to move from even $1 a day to $2 a day. And it might not seem much to us, but imagine you take it at scale. Imagine doubling your income and what that might do to relieving that pressure that you're feeling on a day-to-day basis to start to look at longer term indicators of success for you and your family. It is truly, truly inspiring what these little efforts or little changes that any of us are making can do in the lives of the extreme poor.
So cool. Sandy asks, are you working in other countries?
Yes, we are. So, basically our model, we're a fairly small team at Optimist as a core. So we've really kind of tried to hone in that our value added is in making the films and the stories and the campaigns for it. And then we partner on the ground with great vetted nonprofits that we've worked with around the world or that we've spent time kind of in field developing relationships with. And then any donations that are raised or ongoing programming that we want to support, all of that financing goes to those nonprofits so that we don't have to try to build up as an organization, Optimist, kind of reinventing the wheel of building new programs in a bunch of different countries when, these films, you might take 3 years making a film and really focusing on a campaign around it in a very intentional way. And then, I'll start to shift some of my energy out and moving into a new film or a new project. But I want to make sure that that program sustainably continues to create change. So by having the kind of that partnerships of infrastructure around us, it just makes it, allows these films to continue to give where, Living on $1 is this little film that continues to raise money each year for a great nonprofit in Guatemala called Natun. And, it sustainably funds programs with them that they can kind of manage, have that eyes and ears on the ground and do a great job with. And I think it's something that none of us do enough of in the nonprofit world. It's just partner, partner, partner. There's so many great people out there doing great work, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel versus lifting each other up, and a rising tide lifts all boats.
It is very much the theme of our club that we get a chance to serve our speakers by helping share the stories, and something we're very proud of, to be able to talk about the kind of work you do from the standpoint of innovative service, overcoming challenges and achieving something that represents genuine innovative service means dealing with people's reactions, right? And I'm thinking about the preparation that you and your friends had to whatever extent you did going to Guatemala, right? And getting there and being prepared for how people responded. I'm certain there was a certain amount of friendliness because you're there and you're genuine and that kind of thing. But there's also got to be a certain amount of like, why are you here? Like what are you just going to show up and leave? How does this work? Can you tell us more about how the people in Peña Blanca, I believe it is,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
really reacted to you in the first few days that you were there, and what you kind of wish you had known before you left?
I wish I'd known a lot before we left. I mean, we were really, I mean, at the end of the day, we were college students who were 21 years old, and we didn't have a clue about the world, to be honest. I mean, it was a total fish out of water situation, and that came with certain mistakes that that happened along the way. And I think in some ways, part of why the film works is that there's an authenticity to our own ignorance of our understanding of this situation, and we had to be willing to peel that back for a viewer and to be honest about that ignorance. Where there was a version, again, we did 65 versions of this film. We tried a lot of versions to make it look like a really professional film, to make it seem like we were really put together professionals doing research on the financial lives of the extreme poor. There were elements that, yeah, sure, we were economics majors. We'd read a number of books. We had some support from the authors of Portfolios of the Poor. But no, we were fish out of water. We arrived in this community having no idea how to live under $1 a day. And our first few days there, so one thing we did is we didn't really bring out the cameras for the first week or two. It was really about just like being there, listening, meeting people, because filming or taking photos, even the verb to take a photo, it's extractive. You're taking from someone, and it requires a certain level of trust to allow that relationship to begin to develop naturally. And so for us, it was really just being there, demonstrating as students our authentic desire that we were there to learn. And we were here for a couple of weeks. We didn't even say we were at the time, because we weren't even there to help. We were there just simply to learn and understand. And maybe we could share some of that learnings with others. And, it was a very simple project at the time that I never thought would define, the next decade of my life, right? I'd never taken a film class. I would have never called myself a filmmaker. And we thought we'd make some YouTube videos. And so you never really know where these decisions or these wait what moments might take you. And we talk a lot with different people who especially young people, who are very frustrated about not knowing what their passion is yet, right? And a lot of teachers always tell me or others, the key is you need to follow your passion. And I actually really disagree, because what if you don't know what your passion is yet? Passion is something that's developed over time through trial and error, and allowing yourself that opportunity to develop that passion. And research shows this over and over again. It's not like you're born with a passion of what this is. You've got to get out there and try things. So back to your question, we arrived, the community, was incredibly welcoming off the bat. There were definitely a lot of questions being like, so what are you doing exactly? And why are you doing X, Y, and Z? And, really the student, the younger kids, Chino and his friends were the first ones that we became very close with. They had an immense amount of curiosity, would come and sit with us and learn about the cameras. We'd play together, exchange English words, play soccer, and then they'd all go home and tell their parents, like, hey, you got to go talk to the gringos down there. They're fascinating. They have a little house at the end of the end of the hill there. And then we began to develop more and more relationships. And you can kind of watch that unfold in the film, is, that trust beginning to be developed in, over the time there. And I think, the dollar a day element of what we did, it, in some ways, again, it was kind of like a hokey hook to get people to think about the film or to watch it. But I do think there was an element to it of, had we left every night to go to a hotel, a fancy hotel in a local tourist town, we would not have ever understood what life was like in extreme poverty, right? I mean, just simply the fact of being there 24/7. It wasn't the interviews that we learned from. It was the moments where we sat around making it takes 3 hours to cook hard beans, right? And you'd sit there boiling them over an open fire, and there'd be 20 minutes of silence, but then you'd share a couple words. And that's the moment, those were the moments that we really learned. And just being quiet, taking the time to listen, that's where the true lessons came from.
As a guy who teaches a class to high schoolers called Creative Solutions for the Global Good, I'll have you know that all sings to my heart. So wonderful, wonderful
I'd
stuff.
love to talk with your students sometime. We should.
We will certainly make that happen. That sounds great. We'll wind down the recording. One of the benefits of doing what we do is that we get to meet these amazing people. And even after we finish the recording, we can take another few moments when their time allows to just discuss a little bit more, questions that maybe didn't come up while we were doing the recording. But for all of you who have just watched this, thank you so much for taking your time to learn stories that can inspire, to learn the kinds of things that people are doing around the world that remind us that there is all kinds of good, all kinds of innovative good, all kinds of sustainable good from people who are thinking boldly about what can be. And that kind of energy is a really nice inoculation from the doom scrolling that may occupy some other aspect of your life. And we ask that you do a couple of things. If you are on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page, more easily arrived at via rotary.cool, all right, then what you can do is you can leave a message at the discuss section at the bottom of our screen. That's one of the ways in an online and asynchronous club we share ideas. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. So, Chris, talk to us about what you'd like people to have clearly in mind as they finish watching this video or listening to the podcast.
Yeah, there's this, I want to leave you with a message of optimism. And, there's this framework that we often talk about where, people either believe that the future is changeable or not changeable. And on the other kind of axis of it, they're either optimistic or pessimistic about the world. And I think it's those people who fit that top left quadrant of changeable, believe the future is changeable, and are optimistic about it, that are the ones who are the true change makers. They believe the future can be better, and they're going to work hard to change that. And I think that, that's the message I would love to leave with you all. If you're looking for inspiration, watching any of our films at optimist.co, you'll meet incredible stories of families in Guatemala and Syrian refugee camps, here in the US, building nonprofits for food insecurity, all over the world, you can find issues and people that'll just leave you truly, truly floored and inspired. So I hope you take a look at it, and thank you for being an optimist.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Follow the links to optimist.co and the others that we have at the bottom of the page, and we look forward to seeing you next week.